You spent money on marigolds. You planted them all around your garden like everybody told you to. You watered them, you watched them grow, and you stood back feeling like you finally had this pest problem figured out. And then the aphids came back. The hornworms came back. The whiteflies showed up like they never got the memo. And you're standing there looking at your garden thinking, did I do something wrong? Was I lied to? Here's the truth nobody is telling you. Marigolds work. Lavender works. Basil works. But not the way you're using them. Because one plant, no matter how powerful it is, was never designed to protect your entire garden alone. And the moment you understand what I'm about to show you, you will never look at your garden the same way again. Welcome to Evergreen Garden Life. Please like, share and subscribe, drop a comment telling me what time you're watching this from, and make sure you turn on that notification bell so you never miss out on information like this. We drop content that can genuinely change how you grow, and you don't want to be the last one to find out. Now let's get into it. Think about where you live for a second. Think about your neighborhood, your street, your home. Now imagine if your house had no fence, no lock on the front door, no outdoor light, no barrier of any kind. Just wide open. Anyone could walk in, anything could get in, and you wouldn't know about it until the damage was already done. That's exactly what most gardens look like to pests right now. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as a wake-up call. Because most of us were taught to garden in a way that leaves everything completely exposed. We plant our tomatoes in a row. We plant our peppers in a row. Maybe we throw a few marigolds around the border and call it a day. And when the pests come, which they always do, we grab a spray bottle and start fighting. And we fight. And we spray. And we fight some more. And the moment we stop, they come right back. It's exhausting. And it never actually ends. But here's the thing. The problem was never the pests. The problem was the design. There are small-scale farmers in Oaxaca, Mexico. There are growers in the river communities of America. There are families in rural Georgia and Mississippi who have been passing down gardening knowledge for generations, growing food in the same soil year after year, without reaching for a single bottle of chemical spray. And it's not because pests don't exist in those places. Trust me, they do. It's because somewhere along the way, somebody figured out that if you build your garden the right way, the garden starts protecting itself. Not because of one magical plant, but because of how multiple plants work together, in layers, each one doing a different job, each one backing up the others, creating a defense system so complete that pests don't just get repelled, they get confused, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. That system has a name. It's called layered garden design. And today we are going to break it all the way down. Now before we go any further, I want to be really honest with you about something. If you are watching this right now and you haven't subscribed yet, I need you to stop for just a second. Because what I'm about to share in this video took years of research, real growing experience, and a deep look into how the most successful natural gardeners in the world actually think. This isn't surface-level content. And the people who subscribe to this channel are the people who walk away from every video with something real they can use in their garden the very next morning. If you leave without subscribing, that's completely your choice. But you might find yourself coming back later looking for this information and not being able to find it again. So do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. You deserve to have this in your feed every single week. Alright, let's talk about what layered garden design actually is, because the concept sounds more complicated than it really is. At its core, layered garden design is simply the practice of using multiple different types of companion plants together, each one working through a different mechanism, so that your garden is protected from multiple angles at the same time. Think of it like this. Imagine you are trying to protect something really valuable in your house. You wouldn't just lock the front door and call it security. You'd lock the door, install a camera, add a fence, maybe keep a dog in the yard. Every layer does something different. Every layer covers a gap that the others can't cover alone. And together, they create something that is genuinely difficult to get through. Your garden works exactly the same way. And nature actually designed it to work that way. The problem is that modern gardening advice stripped all of that out and left us with these oversimplified recommendations. Plant marigolds. Spray neem oil. Use row covers. All of those things have their place. But none of them are a system. None of them think ahead. None of them get stronger over time. A layered garden does all three. So let's talk about the 4 layers. Because this is the heart of everything. And once you understand these 4 layers, you will be able to look at any garden and immediately see what's missing and exactly how to fix it. The first layer is your scent disruption layer. And this is the one that most people are already trying to use. They're just using it wrong. Here's what you need to understand about how pest insects actually find your vegetables. They don't see your tomato plant from across the yard and fly straight to it. They follow scent. They pick up chemical signals in the air, compounds that your plants naturally release, and they follow that trail like a map straight to your crops. Aphids do this. Tomato hornworm moths do this. Cabbage moths, whiteflies, carrot flies, they all navigate primarily by smell. So the goal of your scent disruption layer is simple. You flood the air around your crops with competing aromatic signals, so strong that the pests can't lock onto the trail. It's like trying to follow someone's perfume through a room where 50 other people are all wearing strong cologne at the same time. The signal gets buried. The plants that do this best are your aromatic herbs. Basil is one of the most powerful. It releases compounds like eugenol and linalool continuously through its leaves, and those compounds create a kind of aromatic static in the air around your tomato plants that makes it dramatically harder for hornworm moths to identify safe egg-laying sites. But here's where most gardeners go wrong. They plant one basil plant at the end of a row and wonder why it's not working. One plant does not have enough scent. You need clusters. You need basil tucked between every 2 or 3 tomato plants. You need it at the bed edges. You need it in containers placed at entry points to your garden space. The denser the aromatic presence, the stronger the disruption. Rosemary does this for a completely different set of pests. Its compounds, camphor and cineol, are particularly disruptive to carrot flies, bean beetles, and cabbage moths. And because rosemary is a woody perennial, it holds its structure and keeps releasing those compounds even in late autumn when your soft herbs have died back. That's year-round protection from a plant you put in the ground once. Mint works similarly but goes a step further because it also disrupts the scent trails that ants use to navigate. And that matters more than most people realize, because ants are actually managing and protecting aphid colonies in your garden. They move aphids to new plants. They defend them from predators. They farm them for the honeydew they produce. Disrupt the ant communication system, and the whole aphid operation starts to fall apart. The second layer is your soil protection layer. And this one is almost completely invisible, which is exactly why most gardeners forget about it entirely. Here's something that will change how you think about soil. The ground beneath your garden is not empty. It is full of microscopic pests, specifically root knot nematodes, that are attacking your plants from underneath right now, and you would never know it until you pull up a plant and see the damage. Nematodes burrow into plant roots, cause swelling and blockages, prevent nutrient absorption, and silently destroy harvests without ever showing up on a leaf. And because you can't see them, most gardeners never connect the dots between a struggling plant and what's happening below the surface. This is where marigolds become something far more powerful than a pretty border flower. Marigold roots release a compound called alpha-terthianol directly into the surrounding soil. And that compound is toxic to root knot nematodes. Not repellent. Toxic. It actually suppresses the nematode population in the soil around it over time. The longer marigolds are in the ground, the more that compound builds up, and the more the nematode population drops. This is a long-term soil treatment happening quietly every single day underneath your garden. French marigolds are the most effective variety for this. And the denser you plant them, and the longer they stay in the ground, the stronger the effect. Garlic adds another dimension to this layer. Its sulfur compounds, particularly allicin, don't just deter above-ground pests. They also suppress certain fungal problems, soil-borne pathogens, and mildew that weaken plants and make them more vulnerable to insect attack. A weakened plant is always more of a target than a healthy one because stressed plants actually release chemical distress signals that attract certain pests. Garlic planted in rings around fruit trees or dotted between vegetable rows is quietly working on disease pressure at the same time it's dealing with spider mites, Japanese beetles, and thrips. And when the season ends, you harvest real food. Garlic gives back in ways most companion plants simply don't. The third layer is your predator recruitment layer. And this one is where the garden starts to feel genuinely alive. Because this layer is not about repelling anything. It's about calling in reinforcements. It's about inviting the insects that eat your pests to come live in your garden permanently. And this is the layer that transforms a garden from something you constantly manage into something that largely manages itself. The key players here are parasitic wasps, hoverflies, lacewings, and ladybugs. Now, when most people hear parasitic wasp, they get a little nervous. But these are tiny insects, most of them so small you would barely notice them if one landed on your hand. What they do is extraordinary. They lay their eggs inside caterpillars and hornworms. The larvae hatch inside the host insect, feed from within and kill it. It sounds intense, and it is, but it is exactly the kind of pest control that works without you lifting a finger. Hoverfly larvae are equally aggressive aphid hunters. A single ladybug larva can consume over 200 aphids during its development. These are your soldiers. And the plants you grow determine whether they show up or not. Dill is one of the single most important predator recruitment plants you can grow. Its umbrella-shaped flower clusters, called umbels, produce nectar and pollen in a form that tiny parasitic wasps can actually access. Most flowers are too deep or too complex for these small insects to feed from. Dill's flat open flowers are perfectly designed for them. When you let dill go to flower, you are essentially setting up a feeding station for the wasps that hunt your hornworms. Chives do the same thing. Their purple pom-pom flowers appear in spring, exactly when aphid populations are starting to build, and they draw in predatory wasps and hoverflies right when you need them most. Thyme flowers attract the same insects, and because thyme is perennial in most climates, those flowers come back year after year without you doing anything at all. The critical mistake people make with this layer is cutting everything back before it flowers. Dill is the perfect example. Most gardeners harvest dill early and never let it bloom. And by doing that, they are cutting off their entire predator recruitment system at its source. Let some of your companion plants go to flower every season. That is not neglect. That is strategy. The fourth layer is your trap crop layer. And this is the one that catches most people completely off guard the first time they hear it. Because this layer doesn't repel pests at all. It does the exact opposite. It pulls them in. Deliberately. Strategically. And in doing so, it protects everything around it. The concept is called trap cropping. And the idea is elegant in its simplicity. Certain plants are so irresistible to specific pests that when you plant them near your vegetables, the pests choose the trap crop every single time, and leave your actual harvest alone. Nasturtiums are the gold standard for this. Their tender leaves, juicy stems, and vivid flowers are like a magnet for aphids, flea beetles, squash bugs, and cabbage moth caterpillars. It is genuinely common to see a nasturtium plant absolutely covered in aphids while the cucumbers and peppers 2 feet away are completely untouched. You haven't driven the pests away. You've just given them somewhere better to be. And once they're concentrated on the nasturtium, you have complete control. You can trim the infested plant back, remove it entirely, or let the predatory insects you've recruited in layer 3 come in and clean it up for you. Nasturtiums also spread low across the soil, shading out weeds, retaining moisture, and their flowers and leaves are fully edible. Peppery, bright, beautiful in a salad. So this plant is simultaneously pulling pests away from your crops, feeding your beneficial insects, suppressing weeds, and putting food on your table. That is the kind of return on investment that no spray bottle can come close to matching. Now here is where it all comes together. Because understanding each layer individually is useful. But understanding how to stack them in a single garden bed is where the real transformation happens. Let's say you are growing tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers in a raised bed. Here is how you build all 4 layers around and within that bed. Along the outer border, you plant French marigolds densely. That is your soil protection layer working underground on nematodes, and your first line of scent disruption above ground. Just inside that border, you plant rosemary at the corners and basil clustered between every 2 or 3 tomato plants. That deepens your scent disruption layer and creates overlapping aromatic interference across the whole bed. In one corner of the bed or just outside it, you plant dill and chives and allow them to flower. That is your predator recruitment station, drawing in parasitic wasps and hoverflies. And along the front edge of the bed, closest to the walking path, you plant nasturtiums. That is your trap crop layer, the first thing pests encounter when they approach your bed, pulling them away before they ever reach your vegetables. That is 4 layers, for different mechanisms, all working at the same time, all covering different gaps. And once it's established, that system runs itself. You're not spraying. You're not checking every leaf every morning. You're not buying new products every season. You are growing a garden that was designed to defend itself from the inside out. Now I want to say something important before we wrap this up. This kind of knowledge, the kind that actually changes how you grow and saves you real time and real money, it doesn't show up in your feed by accident. You have to be in the right place at the right time. And if you're still watching this video right now, you already know that this channel is one of those places. But here's the thing. A lot of people watched videos just like this one, got something out of it, closed the tab, and moved on. And a few weeks later they're back searching for the same information, starting from scratch, because they never hit that subscribe button. Don't let that be you. Seriously. You've already invested 18 minutes of your time into this. Protect that investment. Hit subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell, because next week's video is going to go even deeper into how to design your garden for year-round protection, and you are not going to want to miss it. The farmers in Georgia, who never bought a bottle of pesticide, didn't have access to anything you don't have right now. They had observations. They had patience. And they had the wisdom to understand that a garden isn't just a collection of plants. It's a living system. And living systems, when designed well, protect themselves. The scent of basil wasn't random. The roots of marigolds weren't an accident. The dill flowers of dill weren't just pretty. Every single one of those plants evolved in relationship with the world around it. And the moment you start designing your garden to reflect that, everything changes. The pests don't disappear overnight, but they get weaker every season while your garden gets stronger. And one day you'll walk outside in the morning, look at your beds, and realize you haven't thought about spraying anything in months. That's the garden you've been trying to build. And now you know exactly how to build it. Thank you for watching Evergreen Garden Life. If this video gave you something real and useful, please share it with someone who is still out there fighting their garden instead of designing it. Leave a comment below, and tell me which of the 4 layers you are going to start with. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, look, I'm going to be straight with you. This channel is putting out information every single week that most gardening channels simply aren't covering at this level. Every week you go without subscribing is another week of missing out on knowledge that could be working in your garden right now. The bell is right there. One tap. That's all it takes. We'll see you in the next one.